Today, we're relaxing by the lake with Linda, a QHS member whose life journey is as refreshing and inspiring as a day spent by the water. But what currents guided her to where she is today? Let's take a peaceful stroll through her story and see what's been happening behind the scenes.
I'm Linda. Like many of us in QHS now, I was raised in the 50s and 60s and had good parents. My mom, the product of a middle-class family, with her dad making a very good living back then as a barber and a very staunch religious fundamentalist. Her mom was the only grandma I ever knew, and she worked as a sales lady at a really nice clothing store. And she bought me and my three sisters and cousins. I had two cousins, quality and stylish clothes for birthdays and Christmas, and also Easter. Both of my maternal grandparents were of German heritage, and Grandma still spoke fluent German, saying her mother didn't even speak English. My dad's family, he thought, were of Irish descent. He was the youngest of 7 children from a rather poor rural family. His mother died when he was a teenager, and he joined the army, lying about his age. He was only 16 and said he was 19 since he looked that age. He served during World War II in North Africa and Italy. He seldom mentioned his experiences, but I always felt like he did something really special there that he never talked about. I saw a silver star on his dresser one time, and he said that it came from saving some communications equipment from a Birmingham operating station where he'd worked. My parents met at the telephone company where they both worked after the war. My mom as a switchboard operator and my dad as a lineman. I understand he had an alcohol problem and his drinking caused lots of family problems. When I was 3, I was stricken with poliomyelitis, causing paralysis in my whole right side, so I couldn't walk or feed myself any longer. I had always heard the story growing up that God spoke to Dad and told him if he'd stop drinking and become a preacher, that I not only would survive, but walk again and live a normal life. So he began the home study course because Dad never finished high school, and became a minister when I was 8 years old. I always had some lingering signs of polio where there was weakness in muscles, especially on the right side of my face, which as a teenager caused me a lot of embarrassment, sometimes even now, because my mouth is crooked. I had a happy childhood for the most part and felt supported and loved by my parents and grandparents and siblings and my church family. But I was also shy and also haunted by nightmares of different kinds, never knowing what the cause was. But they slowly dissipated the older I got and disappeared sometime in my 20s. So we left our beautiful home in a city of around 150,000 people with the bright lights and moved to a very small church in a town half that size, 2 hours away from our big loving church group, where my mom sang solos and sang also in the choir. I used to sit on her lap and I loved being part of that group. We left my grandparents, our 2 cousins, and my school, which I attended, but my 2 little sisters at that time hadn't started school yet. Later on, Mom and Dad had another child when I was 18 years old, but she wasn't born yet at that time. After we moved 3 or 4 more times, we moved to even smaller churches and towns. I feel like I did well adjusting each time, and I graduated school 4th in a class of 42. I was quite the rule follower, so I think I fared much better than my little sisters, little embarrassing button-pushing sisters. Emotionally, but they did become my best friends, and we stuck together pretty much until I started working at age 16 and gradually moved on with life. And then I married shortly after my 3rd sister was born, at age 18, to a local fellow 3 years older who was attending college and working part-time construction in the summertime. He visited me every day at the restaurant where I was working as a waitress, and we got acquainted that way. He had 7 siblings and his parents' farm near where we lived at the time. I didn't think I could afford college, even though I always wanted to study music or art, and didn't want to put that burden on my parents. My dad wasn't a real good money manager, and I knew that would put a strain on the rest of the family had I expected them to pay for my college. My mom had attended Olivet Nazarene College in Kankakee, Illinois, studying music a couple of years after high school. I kind of wanted to follow in her footsteps because I loved music as well, and I was told I had a pretty good singing voice too. My husband and I had our first son just before my 20th birthday, and 2 more sons before I was age 24. But it didn't work out, and we divorced, and I remarried again 2 years later to another farm boy. And by age 32, I had another son. No, by age 32 is when I remarried, and then we had another son by age 34. I had few physical problems at that time in my life and only was in the hospital just to have kids. I did wear glasses for astigmatism and nearsightedness since 4th grade and had 4 wisdom teeth removed in my 20s. However, since joining QHS, my eyes are corrected, except for reading and computer work, like right now, to read my notes. I had good manners and mentors in my life for cooking and eating as well. As well as any middle-class families in the 50s and 60s. But I did learn to cook from Grandma and Mom. And my exercise consisted mainly of taking care of children, working in large gardens, also working in a 200-tree apple orchard, and later on farm chores with pigs, chickens, rabbits, and cattle. We even had a horse I enjoyed riding for a while. My favorite pastimes, both with and without the family, was skating, roller skating, swimming, boating, fishing, hiking, and riding bikes occasionally. My alone favorites were reading and crafts, knitting, writing, and just learning in general. Our youngest son was studying as an athletic trainer, and he urged me to start exercising regularly in a gym. So I did that 3 or 4, well, more like 2 or 3 times a week for about 5 years to keep in shape. Mostly strength, resistance, and weight machines, but some treadmill. And then later I bought some equipment and keep it at home and use it quite a bit, but not like I should. My main problems at that time were emotional, from learned dysfunctional family behaviors, restrictive religious rules that I had bought into, and also I was learning to sort out blended family challenges and draw some boundaries that I needed to do. I returned to work in the office as a clerk and a buyer after my divorce, and returned there again a couple years before my 16-year-old son, the youngest of the first 3, was killed in a car accident. It was a really difficult time for all of us. But my dear sweet husband, who was also trying to balance all the family drama and manage a farm, I didn't think was supportive at the time, but I realized that he was just doing the very best that he possibly could, and he supported my efforts to overcome my grief. He also helped care for things at home and our youngest son's activities, while I attended college class to finish my business degree that I'd started before my divorce and never finished. My older boys had graduated high school by then, and my husband's older children were living with their mother most of the time. While working in business as an office manager / buyer / materials manager, I finished a degree in psychology and then grad studies and became a licensed counselor to begin working in mental health, community mental health, and then as a supervisor of home-based workers in a social service agency a few miles away from us. And I enjoyed that all very much. It was very rewarding. All this time, I was still looking for answers outside myself, not completely over my grief, reading as much as possible about the afterlife, near-death experiences, or other unusual phenomena. Not talked about by other people, of course, because the religion that I was raised with just wasn't working for me, and neither were the antidepressants or the HRT I had been on for about 10 years. Just before the time I retired, I started my own counseling service, taking a few clients of my own through their employment programs, some insurances, and self-paying clients. I also became our township trustee, and after retiring for good, sort of, I volunteered a few different places and had some part-time jobs, but after a while began to feel I really wasn't needed anywhere, and my health began to decline. It was decided that I needed a hysterectomy, bladder suspension, appendectomy, and I also had bladder removed because of a large stone. Also had foot reconstruction, and then a fracture below my knee that needed some attention for about 8 weeks. I also realized my right hip was giving way, maybe arthritis, and also I had lots of inflammation in my hands where I had stopped my beloved knitting and crafts and writing and playing the piano that I enjoyed sometimes. On top of all that, then the Big C and the 2020 debacle, which we all know about, those at the time just angered me, and so I started seeking answers outside the normal routes again, which I typically would do when in emotional pain. I'd learned a lot about myself and didn't fall for other people's nonsense anymore. Through all that, I found QHS, thank goodness, thanks to Simon Parks, Alex Collier, Ron Giles, and Tracy, and from listening to many other podcasts on frequency and alternative healing modalities. Then I heard Cynthia talking to Ron, and I just knew where I was supposed to go to complete the rest of my life story. Since receiving my QT my black device 16 months ago, and then the V6 7 months ago, many of these physical and emotional problems have begun to go away, notably inflammation and pain in my hands, and my emotional stability is much better. My thought process has improved dramatically, and I'm excited to see what life brings next and what role I'll be able to play going forward. I believe after the QArc, my life will be filled with even more love and joy and excitement, new adventures, and being always with people I love. Not only my family, but all the members of QHS and many new friends I'll surely meet. I'll love doing my work every day and serving others, helping them heal, both emotionally and physically. Maybe get to travel some, seeing everyone flourish and grow, and be able to take good care of myself as well.
Join us on the Prequel, where every story matters and every voice is heard. Because here at QHS, we're all about healing, learning, and growing together.